On October 4th, 2019, Warner Brothers released the movie Joker into cinemas. Yes, they stepped into the world of Batman again with a Joker origin story movie. Now, let's go back a bit, step back. Now, when this film was first announced, there was a lot of dismay amongst the fans. It didn't sound like a good idea. Step back even further. Before this, the last iteration of the Joker we had on the big screen was Heath Ledger playing the Joker in The Dark Knight. Now, that iteration of the Joker was a kind of force of nature. He was a more real-worldy type of a Joker, and he had no backstory to him whatsoever. He had no origin story or anything like that. Everything was a mystery. And when you've got a character shrouded in mystery, it always piques people's interest, and that's what this film done. So you've had that, and then almost 10 years later you get this, and this is an origin story for the character. So the freshest thing in people's minds is what came before, that being the wonderful Heath Ledger's performance. And then yet again, step back before that, and we had Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Again, a performance that we thought couldn't be topped, but it was in a rather different way as Heath Ledger. So you had two fantastic performances out of two fantastic actors for the character of the Joker. So how could this film possibly work? Not only that, the film was going to be directed by Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips, who had brought us the Hangover trilogy several years beforehand. He was going to be doing a Joker movie. So this just made people like a bit, we had rumours that Martin Scorsese would be producing the movie. This never came to pass, although the film does feel like it's got a kind of Scorsese vibe to it, and sort of Taxi Driver-ish. So there is that. Now, the film had a budget of $55 million, which is a rather small budget for a tentpole release superhero type of movie, a comic book movie. But this film was, the way it was shot and all that, we can understand why. But the movie went on to gross $1,074.5 million worldwide. That is huge. On a budget of $55 million, those execs up at Warner Brothers were partying the night away when that came through. They were on their cocaine, snorting away with their hookers and whatever else they do. They were having a field day on the making of the money this film made. Now, as the film went into production, obviously, we got casting news and all this, and we had Joaquin Phoenix, who's a fantastic actor in his own right, cast as the role of Arthur Fleck, Joker. Robert De Niro would be starring in the movie as Murray Franklin. And Zazie Beetz as Sophie Drummond. And the film also had a wealth of other acting talent that propped the movie up, actors that you would recognise in other roles. Like I've already said, the film was directed by Todd Phillips, from a screenplay by Todd Phillips and Scott Silver. And the film would have a soundtrack by Hilda Gwondater. I'm hoping I've got that name right. I may possibly not have. Now, when the first trailer for this film hit, it took the internet by storm. I mean, that first trailer, even now you can watch it, and it is a fantastic trailer. It's a fantastic put together trailer, and it just blew people's minds away. It wasn't what people were expecting. This looked like a really, really, really good film. Now, I have my opinions on this film, which I will come into, and it's a very divisive film for me in a certain way, which we'll get into in this video. Now, I did go cinema to see this film, obviously, and when I saw it, I was blown away. It was fantastic. The story also obviously follows the character of Arthur Fleck, who is this mild sort of mannered individual, a sort of loner, no friends. He lives at home with his mum and cares for her. He's got mental health issues. He's on medication. He works as a clown for hire, whether it's at children's parties or on the street. throwing around signs, all this sort of thing, and he has been beaten down by society. He is having beaten down by the people around him, by his colleagues, by the system, the medical system, and all this. Everything is failing him, and he's just living through this horrible life. And what happens is it pushes him to a breaking point, and he ends up down the path he does, which takes him deeper into mental health issues, brings out a sort of duality in his identity, and thusly he becomes the Joker. We do also have a storyline involving Thomas and Martha Wayne, whereby we find that Arthur Fleck could possibly or may not be the illegitimate child of Thomas Wayne, and thusly a brother to Bruce Wayne. We do see a young Bruce Wayne in the film as well. Now, the film is all set in like the sort of 1980s, 1970s going into 1980s, that sort of an era. So that's where you get that sort of Taxi Driver vibe from it. It was fantastic setting it in that time, because setting it in that time distanced itself from anything else in the current DCEU extended universe at the time. So there was no question whether this film was part of that or not part of that. It wasn't part of that. It was its own entity, its own movie. Now, the film, like I said, it delves into themes of mental health, of the failures of government systems, what happens when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, anarchy breaks loose, people have had enough, and all this sort of thing. And this is all triggered by actions of the Joker, and he kind of gets empowered himself by this, because the media goes out on a storm after him, and he's got normal people who see him as this sort of saviour type of a figure over what he's done, and follow him because they feel the same as what he does, and this sort of thing. So yeah, it's got a wonderful story to it. Now, the acting in the film is fantastic, because you've got top talent. You've got Joaquin Phoenix, who put himself on an apple-only diet to lose the weight for the movie. He went through a massive physical transformation to lose loads of weight and become this very skinny, gaunt-looking individual for Arthur Fleck. Robert De Niro, he's fantastic in the film as Murray Franklin, but ultimately the film is Joaquin Phoenix's film. Every scene in the film follows him. It's all him, because the film has some sense of ambiguity to it, in the sense that as the viewer you don't know if what you're watching is true or isn't, because there's certain aspects of the film that you're shown, and then you're shown later on to question the reality that Arthur Fleck is living in, and whether what's going on is actually for real or in his mind, because elements of the film are, and this sort of thing. So one of the issues I have with the film is at the very end, when you have the death of Thomas and Martha Wayne when they come out of the theatre, which is at the point in the movie where Arthur Fleck has caused this breakdown of society, this sense of anti-disestablishmentarianism that the individuals of the town of Gotham are feeling, and there's this riot going on and this sort of thing, and they get killed during this. Now, the reason I say it stands out as a scene for me that maybe shouldn't have been in the film, because the whole film is around Arthur Fleck. What I mean is that every single scene in this film is Arthur Fleck. It doesn't cut away to other characters elsewhere doing something else. It is him, and that takes you into the delving into the mind of him, and whether everything is real or isn't real, and whether it's his real reality or just made up in his head, because he's just telling, it's like he's telling a story of himself, but he's not a very, you can't take everything to say, take everything that he's saying as being gospel, so to speak. So to step away highlights the scene, this is the only scene in the film where you step away from him, and it's some actions which are occurring around a corner, essentially. So it's happening, but not in his mind. Now, the original idea for this ending was that it was him that had pulled the trigger, and he then pulls the trigger on Bruce and actually shoots Bruce Wayne and kills him. Obviously, that didn't come to pass, but that would have made more sense in the context of the film being inside his head. Now, So the acting is fantastic. The cinematography on the film is superb. It looks like it's set in the era that it's meant to be set. The costume design, all this stuff, and even the way the film is filmed, it just looks. It's got that dirty sort of lived-in world look of New York in the 80s. You know, with your strip bars and this sort of thing. It just looks fantastic, and that's where it gets that sort of Martin Scorsese kind of an anaesthetic to the film, shall we say. Now, the musical score in the film by Hilda Guandater, it's a haunting score. No two ways about it. This film has a haunting soundtrack to it, and I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean is that this music in this film, you know, a lot of it is done on string instrument, and it just props up the proceedings of the film, and it gives you this haunting vibe. And it's not a soundtrack that you'd listen to outside the context of the film. I believe I wouldn't do anyway, but for the film it works, and it adds to the loneliness and the sorrow of this character, and you can't help but feel sorry for the character, and obviously the music does convey this as well. Now, like I said towards the beginning of this video, it's a film that is very divisive for me, because each time I watch this film, I love it that much more. It's just a fantastic story of an individual who's been betrayed by a system that's there to look after him, and the story of what mental health can do to someone. Obviously, to the extreme, shall we say. But it's wonderful in that sense, and the journey that he goes on, and the deeper and deeper he gets into this rabbit hole, and there's no turning back, and this sort of a thing, and the destruction of himself and himself within society, and all that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful story piece. But each time that I watch it and love it a bit more like that, I like it less and less as a Joker movie. Yes, I think this is a wonderful piece, and obviously the film would work in exactly the same way if you took out all the elements of this being the Joker, just of a man beaten down by society. So the film works more so on that level for me than what it does as a Joker movie. And that's not to be critical of the film, because this was like one of my favourite films of 2017, or was it 2019 when it came out. Yeah, it's just a wonderful, wonderful piece of cinema. Todd Phillips knocked the directing out of the park. I didn't think that he'd be able to direct something like this, seeing his other works, but I was proven wrong, which is fantastic, as was a lot of other people. Now, the film itself, it runs for 2 hours and 2 minutes. Some people might find it slow and boring. For me, it's a well-paced movie. It's a very well-written movie, fantastic story. But yeah, so all in all, I do love this movie. I love the acting in it. It deserved to make the money it made. It deserved to get the accolades it did, and all this sort of thing. But as a Joker movie, as a comic book movie, it doesn't work. It's not that sort of type of a film if you're expecting, you know... I don't want to see anything more of this Joker. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing, right? Because this film as a standalone movie is fantastic. But I feel that if they take this character, and I know there's talks, rumours of a sequel, that, you know, if they did decide to put him into a DC sort of universe, it would ruin what this movie is. I don't think this film needs a sequel. I think it's best left well enough alone. Sorry, why does everything need to be sequelized? This film works wonders on its own. But yeah, so anyway, so that's just my thoughts on The Joker from 2019. A wonderful piece of cinema, but a frustrating movie for me, because, like I said, I love it and I dislike it in one aspect. But overall, it's a you know, this is a top tier film. No denying that. Anyway, this is AJ. Thanks for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, come and join in the channel, and leave me a comment down below, your thoughts, and everything else that goes with that. This is AJ. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care all. Goodbye.